Guitar Solo Countdown.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of Jimmy Wolf's Guitar Solo Countdown. In this episode, we are going to look at arguably the greatest metal band of all time, and certainly the most successful metal band of all time, Metallica, as well as their main lead guitar player, Kirk Hammett. Metallica was formed by Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield in 1981 in Los Angeles. The band decided to relocate to San Francisco since the glam metal scene couldn't relate to Metallica's harder thrash edge. After firing Dave Mustaine, who would eventually form Megadeth, the band recruited Exodus guitar player Kirk Hammett, and the classic lineup of Metallica was ready to record their debut thrash metal masterpiece, Kill 'Em All. The band would release 2 more classic records until tragedy struck when the band's tour bus ran off the road, killing bassist Cliff Burton. Jason Newsted quickly filled the bass role, and the band recorded their first commercial breakthrough album, And Justice for All. The band then hired the superstar producer at the time, Bob Rock, and the band recorded one of the biggest selling albums of all time, the Black Album. Kirk Hammett was an integral part of Metallica's sound. His guitar playing mixes the early neoclassical metal sounds of Michael Schenker and Uli Roth with the exotic guitar teachings of Joe Satriani. His fast melodic leads lend a perfect complement to Hetfield's aggressive vocal style. Okay, so let's check out the top 10 solos of Metallica's Kirk Hammett.
Number 10. Number 9. Number 8. Number 5. Number 4. Number 3. Number 2. Number 1.
Okay, so yes, Ride the Lightning is my favorite Metallica solo. I will say, though, that this was a very difficult ranking. For one, I think there's just so many guitar solos in the Metallica catalog. But I also found that there wasn't really a universal consensus on what Kirk Hammett's greatest solo is. If you go online and do a search for top guitar solos, I mean, like every list is completely different. The only similarities I could kind of find were for the popular songs like One, and there was a lot of Black Album songs as well, like The Unforgiven and Nothing Else Matters, but I think that might just be because of the popularity of the music. So yeah, this was very difficult. I had to increase the count down to 10 solos instead of 5, but yeah, my top 2 were pretty easy. I love Ride the Lightning because it takes more of a compositional approach to it. The solo is definitely worked out. It's not improvised quite as much. I mean, there's sort of improvised sections, I would imagine, but most of it is worked out because of the harmony guitar parts. You can't improvise those, so those were definitely worked out. And I love how it was composed as its own section. Like some of the chords behind the guitar solo are only for the guitar solo. Like you don't hear them again. And I really love how the solo starts with that really eerie tapping lick. It has a little bit of polytonality to it because that's not the typical triad that you would use for this key, right? So it's a little bit like Kirk does a lot of that on this record. He does a lot of polytonality. Some of it doesn't work very well, but most of it does, and I think that's probably the influence of Joe Satriani. It was kind of neat too. I read this interview with Kirk, and he was saying that that during the rehearsals for the Ride the Lightning album, he would ride his bike to the music store and take lessons with Joe Satriani. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously I think there's going to be a lot of disagreements on the ranking here, and if you have any comments you want to leave, just let me know. I think at the end of the day, I had to go with my gut on what I liked the best. I couldn't use my head on this one. I mean, if I tried to be more logical and objective, I always just kind of fell flat. This feels like these are my favorite Kirk Hammett solos. Okay, so let's check out the discography here. Now, the first album was probably one of the greatest debut thrash albums ever. Kill 'Em All came out in 1983. This album basically established the band as the leading metal band of metal and also of thrash metal. So they were just the leaders of everything metal at this time. The only other album I can think of that could compete, I think, is Slayer's first record. Yeah, I mean, this is just an amazing record. A lot of songs. There's a few covers. Just those buzzsaw guitars. Kurt's sort of a UFO kind of neoclassical blues leads are just incredible here. I think they had recorded a demo of this record with Dave Mustaine, but he was kicked out and Kurt had to replace his leads. So yeah, I think there actually is a demo version of this record on YouTube that you can check out with Dave on it. So now this album probably would have gotten a better score if these other albums weren't released, but when we get to Ride the Lightning, the next record, I mean, this is even better. Just sonically, compositionally, the songs are just a step up here. Every song is a classic. The first time I heard this record, I mean, it was almost like a religious experience. It was so good. This is probably my favorite Metallica record. I think it still has the grit and the rough, aggressive edges of Kill 'Em All, but it's got this huge leap in sophistication, and it's just the perfect mixture of both. Okay, so then how do you follow this up? Well, you follow this up with probably the band's masterpiece. It's considered their masterpiece, Master of Puppets. This is always at the top of every list of greatest metal record of all time. And I wouldn't disagree with that. It feels like a part 2 to Ride the Lightning. I mean, it really feels like they realized how important Ride the Lightning was, and they wanted to capitalize off that formula. Yeah, I mean, like, even if you compare side one of both of these records, right, you have Fight Fire with Fire versus Battery, very aggressive, kind of warlike songs. And then you have the title track as the second track. And then you have the slow dirge, the thing that should not be versus For Whom the Bell Tolls. And then you have the ballad, right? So, I mean, this is definitely, this feels like a sequel to me. It could be like a Godfather 1 versus Godfather 2 or Star Wars versus Empire. Both fantastic records. So after this record, tragedy struck. Cliff Burton died in a bus accident, unfortunately. So that was a huge blow. Especially on these two records, you could really hear that Cliff was sort of the classically trained secret weapon of this band, right? So that was very unfortunate. So they recruited Jason Newsted, and they recorded an EP called Garage Days Revisited. It's a good record. I included it here because I think Metallica does a great job of covering, their sort of more obscure peers. You have bands like Diamond Head and Budgie and, to some extent the Misfits, but, they're definitely more popular than the other two. But I think it's great and noble that Metallica would do this. They've achieved such recognition and popularity that it really helps their less popular peers to cover their songs, and they do a fantastic job doing it too. So I definitely wanted to include this album here. Okay, now we get to Metallica's fourth official release, and Justice for All. Now this album was probably Metallica's first taste of the mainstream. They did have a hit off this record with One. I mean, if you call it a hit, they had a video, and it definitely was played a lot on MTV. Yeah, this album is, it does have its issues. I find, it's pretty famous now that that there seems to be a lack of bass on this record. There's essence of bass, I think, in the guitar mix, but for some reason they turned down Jason's bass here. I don't know if that was an accident or if it was, in respect to Cliff, or maybe it was a haze to Jason. Like, I don't know. But it was a dumb move. And I think some people might say that compared to the earlier records, this has kind of a dry, kind of cold, clinical feel to it. But I don't mind it. It kind of, it's sort of a forerunner to Pantera, where, Pantera's records would have that very sort of precise, clicky kind of metal sound to their albums. And also Megadeth had this production sound with Countdown to Extinction. So, this kind of has become the prototypical metal mix. Obviously, it would have been better with bass, but and I find the songs are a little long as well. I definitely get listener fatigue on this record. Especially by the time I get to Frayed Ends of Sanity, I'm just finding that the songs are just going on a little too long here. But having said that, there's moments of brilliance here. The Shortest Straw is a fantastic tune. One obviously is a classic. I love Blackened and the title track and Justice for All. Really good songs. Dyer's Eve is just killer. Flawed but great record. I think it's one of the greatest album covers of all time too. I've actually got a tattoo of this album cover. So, okay, now we get to their self-titled album. This is where the band broke through to the mainstream in a big, big way. I guess you could say that Injustice kind of broke them through partially, but this album just knocked down everything. I don't have the sales numbers in front of me here, but I think this thing went, probably 17 to 25 times platinum. It's up there. It's up there with the biggest selling records of all time. So it was recorded in Vancouver with Bob Rock. Metallica joined the fleet of bands that would go to Vancouver and try harder. And, try harder they did. This album is definitely all the problems that Injustice for All had as far as production goes are solved here. This album is probably Metallica's best sounding album. You know, the songs are shorter, they're slower, they're more accessible. It was difficult to give this album a rating though, because I feel like this album could be a 10, but I feel like it doesn't stand up to the early catalog. I still don't really feel like this is a Metallica album. Like, some part of me feels like this isn't Metallica. You know, I know it is Metallica, but it just doesn't feel like the Metallica that I love the most, you know? So for that reason, I have to put this album a little lower on the list. But, you know, as far as technically on paper, this is a good record. The songs are very well written. And it also, this album also legitimized metal too. You know, it made metal mainstream, it made metal okay. It wasn't this underground thing anymore. It was a legitimate form of music. So this was a very, very important record. Okay, so now we're entering out of Metallica's golden period. You know, we have the famous 90s onslaught here, which, I mean, destroyed most 80s bands. Metallica wasn't really immune here. So we get the Load records in the mid-90s here. These albums really confused me. I remember when I saw the video for When It Sleeps, I just didn't get it, you know. First of all, Metallica cut off their hair, which most bands were doing, and they started to wear makeup. I don't have anything against the glam bands. Like, I love a lot of the makeup bands, but that's not who Metallica was. They were a revolt against that 80s hair metal glam thing. They would famously just wear regular clothes, you know, torn jeans and sneakers, and no makeup, right? So when they start wearing makeup, it just feels like this is not the brand of Metallica that I bought into, you know? So it's a very confusing image for me. You know, the band also sounds kind of like a southern rock band here, so I just, this is not metal anymore. I mean, it's less metal than the Black Album. And they also got rid of their logo. They kind of got rid of the jagged lightning bolt M and A logo things there. So that kind of bugged me as well. You know, so I mean, clearly they're trying something new, and it's just not Metallica. It's not metal. So I did not buy into these albums at the time, and I still don't buy into them. But I will say that there are, fairly good songs here. The production's great. So that's why these albums, don't rank lower. But yeah, I'm definitely not really a fan of these. Now the band released another garage sort of cover record. I'm a big fan of this one too. Same thing with this album. I just love it when Metallica covers bands. I think they do a great job of it. So yeah, this album's great. Okay, now we get to Saint Anger. This album is a little confusing too. I hated it when I first heard it. James and Kirk tune their guitars down. The drums have a very kind of strange metallic trash can sound that I've actually grown to not mind. This album, in my opinion, has aged pretty well. I can hear the confusion and the anger in the music. It feels very frustrated. But it does feel like Metallica is pushing the boundaries once more, which I did not get on the Load records. So I do feel like this album is breaking ground, and that's what I thought Metallica was always very good at. They were always good at being ahead of the pack, and I'm getting a glimpse of that here. Okay, so now we get to 2008, and the band recruits Rick Rubin, and they release Death Magnetic. Now, I have to be really upfront with this. I don't like this record. I didn't like it when it came out, and I don't like it now. I don't get anything from it. It feels like Metallica is doing the correct thing here, where they're going back to their roots, and they're making just a very straightforward Metallica metal record. And, on paper that sounds good, but this album just doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't speak to me. I don't get that magical vibe that I got with the early Metallica albums. It just feels like a very kind of tired, worn-out band. Feels like a Hollywood remake of a classic movie, We're all sick of those. It has that feeling to me. I get listener fatigued, like on the first couple of songs even. It just doesn't really, it's not an enjoyable experience for me. The playing's good. The branding's good. But yeah, for me, the emotion is it's just missing for me. And I also get the same feeling with the new record. Hardwired to self-destruct. I don't get anything from this, I think the production's a little better here, but I don't know. I'm just, do we need a double record? Do we even really need a new record? I don't think Metallica is saying anything relevant or new anymore. This is just kind of what a new Metallica record should sound like, I guess. But I'm a big no here, and I would like to enjoy these albums because I would consider myself a Metallica fan through and through. But I'm not feeling these ones. Okay, so that's the end of the Metallica episode here. My apologies for ending on a down note. Yeah, it's unfortunate that Metallica hasn't released a great record in 30 years, but that's okay. Some of the greatest bands in the world are very front-loaded, and most of their greatness has already passed. But I think it's still great that Metallica's playing live, and I think a lot of people might actually love these new records, and I think that's good. I think if there's disagreements on that, I think that's a good thing. That's what makes great art, is when there's differing interpretations of something. Okay, so next week we're going to look at America's greatest rock and roll band, Aerosmith. I'll see you guys then.